You're listening to the Franchise Freedom Podcast with Giuseppe Grammatico.
Welcome to the Franchise Freedom Podcast. I'm your host, Giuseppe Grammatico, your franchise guide, the show where we help corporate executives experience time and financial freedom via franchising. And very excited. We're continuing with the series of your FAQs. And today's topic is, how much does a franchise cost? Very, very popular topic, and wanted to dive in and address costs and ranges and things like that. So how much does a franchise cost? Well, a franchise is a business, and there's always going to be variables and different expenses or the makeup of that actual investment. But an investment on a franchise could be, just say, when you add everything together, $50,000 to in the millions, $50,000 into the millions. That's a huge range, and we're going to discuss why the range and what's the difference there. So you get the franchise disclosure document, the FDD, going forward as a reference. We had a whole show just on acronyms and franchise terms and meanings. So you get the FDD, and the FDD is going to give you an item 7. And I just want to address this. In the item 7, you have a low end and a high end on the investment, and it will break it down. It's itemized. And one number, typically the top number, is the franchise fee. That is the one-time franchise fee, the fee you pay in order to purchase the access to the franchise, and there will be additional franchise fees, typically at a discount if you purchase more than one territory or more than one franchise location. So these will vary. I've seen very low numbers, 10, 20,000. I've seen them 50,000 and above. There are ranges, and that's going to change. It's case by case depending on the franchise. So the part of the investment is the franchise fee, and then it's going to be itemized. So it's going to include in there technology. If you need to purchase a computer, travel to visit the franchise or to make your final decision, travel for training. Will you have employees attending? Is there a cost for training, if any? And if not, is the travel included, or do you have to pay for that? That's an itemized line on the investment on the item 7. And then I'll go into marketing. It may be, depending, and they'll include that. Is it 3 or 6 months marketing? Working capital. You want to make sure that you have money on hand to pay your employees. And, maybe it's a salary. You have one employee. Maybe it's a couple employees, but you want to make sure that that's all itemized in the item 7, and kind of listing that as the list goes on. If it's a brick and mortar location, now you're adding things such as build-out costs, permits, licenses, anything you need, to rents, right? You got to pay the landlord to build out that specific location. So that'll be a light item there. So not just ask what the franchise fee is, but you want to ask, give me an itemized listing so you have a general idea of what it will be. And then if I want to buy more than one location, what is if it's brick and mortar, the investment may be the same. Maybe you can have one GM run multiple locations. Is there a discount in the actual franchise fee to purchase that additional territory? There typically is, or typical location. Those discounts will vary. Is there a discount? You serve, you're a veteran. Typically, there are veteran discounts. Ask for any type of discount that may be in there, and obviously you would deduct that from your total investment. So a lot of variables. Now, when looking at why they give you a low and high when it comes to the actual investment itself, is that it depends too on exactly how you're looking to launch this business. So some home-based businesses may require at some point an office. Some people maybe opt to get a small office initially, and others may wait till the first year to see how things are going. Obviously, that's going to be an additional expense. Vehicles. Are you buying a new vehicle, a used vehicle? Are you leasing the vehicle? These are other things to take into consideration. Obviously, leasing, keep the expense much lower and versus buying the vehicle outright. As far as an expense, are you deducting that all in 1 year? Are you spreading that out? So these are things to take in consideration. If it comes to the actual build out in real estate, a big city, New York City, building out and opening up a storefront versus somewhere maybe outside the city where it's more rural. What is that going to change, or how is that going to change the investment? So we talk in previous shows about footprint. Maybe the franchisor recommends an 8,000 square foot space, and you opted for the right location. It's 7,000. So obviously that price per square foot is going to be consistent, but now you're paying on us for a smaller space. So lots of things to consider. Looking at them. So you'll look at the item 7, discuss that with the franchisor. You'll also get to valet and speak with franchisees just to see what their experience was. Maybe going a little bit more aggressive on the marketing and doubling down on the marketing. Is that something maybe the current franchisees recommend? So that'll be part of the investment as well, right? We want to make sure we have an all-inclusive number, so you know exactly what this business is going to cost you all in, making sure that you have enough working capital. You're going to potentially fund this. Maybe it's an SBA loan. Maybe you fund this with your retirement plan. But if you have any type of loan, you want to make sure to cover the down payment and cover the monthly costs, and have that buffer, making sure that if the business takes a little bit longer to take off, that you have the money there to pay your rent and your employees and the ongoing expenses. So that buffer is going to be crucial. That's what we tell everyone, that you making sure that going through this process, making sure that you have money aside, not just for the business, but for your personal expenses. And if you're keeping a job, and what's left over at the end of the month to cover personal expenses and everything else. And maybe that'll help create that buffer. But for people looking to do this full time, making sure your personal expense is completely covered and you have that buffer in the business to, maybe it takes a little bit longer to get the business up and running. Maybe you're dealing with insurance work where the business takes off right away, but now you're dealing with an insurance agency that typically pays out a little bit later versus same day with some other businesses. So these are all things to consider. That's more of a cash flow versus an investment, but you want to make sure the buffer and the cash is there. So that's kind of a breakdown, as far as what a franchise costs. It's just like any other business. The one additional fee is that franchise fee. But on the flip side, on a startup, you may not incur a franchise fee. Obviously, it's not a franchise, but you want to consider your time and how the amount of energy and the investment in figuring out how the ideal business flows, and what's the systems in place and vendors and things like that. So the franchise fee is that one-time fee that you will not incur again. There may be a fee when it comes to renewing your agreement, but you want to just take that into consideration. So I wouldn't say one is more expensive than the other when you compare it to a startup. And we had a whole show just on that. But think about exactly how you want to launch the business. Do you just want to run with the system already in place, which is something I always enjoyed, or if you want to create the system and the entire business from scratch? There's definitely going to be some advantages to each and disadvantages. But it's something to think about, and that's something that we tackle on the initial call. Figuring out if a franchise is a good fit. So lots of things to consider. With any franchise, you want to make sure and look at, figure out your liquidity and your net worth, as each franchise company will have financial requirements, and then speaking with a funding company to just look at in your bank and whomever. Maybe it's a personal loan you get, making sure you have the funding there to maybe just launch the business, cover the monthly note payments, and making sure you have some type of buffer there. So not a direct number, because we've talked about it. There's 4,000 franchise companies, and they're all over the map when it comes to investment. So you just want to make sure that franchise is within budget. You cover your funding options, and it's the right fit. We want something sustainable. We want something you're going to enjoy, not just what's the product or service, but what is the role of the franchise owner. You find a great system and something you enjoy doing, it's going to be much more sustainable and increase the odds of success. So hopefully you found this helpful. If you have any questions on this, you know where to reach me, ggthefranchiseguide.com. You can comment. You can, if you're receiving this via the newsletter, respond to the newsletter, and let me know any other questions you have or another topic you have on our future show. we're keeping these. We've been pretty consistent, around 10 minutes each. And we appreciate you guys. We appreciate everything. We appreciate you listening, your support, your questions, and looking forward to some future shows. So we'll continue with the series, the FAQ series, as we call it, and talk to you soon. All right, bye-bye.
Thanks for tuning in. Whenever you're ready, here are 3 ways Giuseppe can help. 1. If you've ever considered owning a business of any kind, you owe it to yourself to get a copy of Giuseppe's book, Franchise Freedom. Download your free copy at ggthefranchiseguide.com/book. 2. Want to understand how successful executives make the transition from corporate to owning their own franchise? Join Giuseppe's next online presentation, Franchise Freedom: How to Escape the Corporate World and Have Financial and Time Freedom by Owning a Franchise, by going to ggthefranchiseguide.com/video. 3. Want to work with Giuseppe one-on-one to identify the right franchise opportunity for you, to navigate the process, and get plugged into experienced franchising advisors? Send him an email to gg@ggthefranchiseguide.com with one-on-one in the subject, and he'll send you all the details.